Welcome to Elevate Your Mind, your number one podcast for peak performance strategies that will enhance your mindset, develop your emotional skill set, and maybe, just maybe, be the catalyst to create positive forward momentum in your life. Here's what's to come from today's pod.
Panic, and hear me on this, panic is a beautiful emotion that people use at the most convenient times. Have you never realised that? Panic always shows up for you at the perfect time, doesn't it? Boom! We are live with another episode of Elevate Your Mind. Welcome back to the podcast. I feel like they're coming very thick and fast for you at the moment. We've got a lot of value to give, a lot of things to share with you. Today is no different. Today, why panic exists in your life. Why panic exists in your life. And this is going to hit home with so many. When I deep dive into what I do here, limiting emotions, limiting beliefs, panic is almost like the final boss, if you like. And what I mean by the final boss is when everything becomes too much, when the anxiety, when the fear, when the overwhelm, when the depression, when the sadness, when the guilt, when the stress becomes too much, panic breaks out. And in this particular podcast episode, my goal here is to share with you why panic exists in your life, but more importantly, what you can do to prevent panic from existing in your life. Because believe it or not, panic is simply a automatic emotional response that occurs, but it occurs for a very particular reason. And when I share and show you how it occurs, what we can then do is put some factors in place to stop it from occurring. Because for so many of you, panic can be something that cripples you emotionally. It can be something that stops you in your tracks and stops all progress that you may have made in any area of your life. If you want to break through in that relationship, panic can stop me. If I want to quit my job, panic can stop me. If I want to take that next step with my health, panic can stop me. If I want to break out of certain traits, panic can stop me. Well, no more. Because I'm going to simplify this into black and white so you have a very, very clear understanding. Because you'll get an understanding from people online and from various sources that will give you the science behind it. And it's wonderful. I love the science. I love the science and understanding why and what and who. I love that. But here's the thing. This is what holds so many people back. The science of understanding doesn't equal the science of breakthrough. The science of understanding does not equal the science of breakthrough. So many of you, you'll be familiar with language like fight or flight response. You'll be familiar with language like the amygdala. You'll be familiar with language like the vagus nerve. Wonderful. How much closer are you to overcoming your anxiety, your fear, your worry, your panic? Any closer? No, because the science of understanding does not equal the science of breakthrough. And so many wonderful minds out there, they're great, absolutely wonderful at sharing the science of understanding with people. And they will share with you how the neural pathways within your brain works, how your nervous system operates. And it's great, it really, really is. I love it. It doesn't translate to what you can implement at home though to help you overcome it. Because like I always say, there are two parts to your brain. There's the conscious thinking mind and the emotional mind, and they communicate in two very different ways. So what I like to do and what separates my work from the vast majority of others out there is I take all that science, I take all of that information, that science of understanding, and I apply it to the science of breakthrough, and I deliver it in such a way to you where you go, do you know what? It just makes sense what he says. And so many people say this to me. They'll say to me, Matt, you explain things in a way that I've never heard before. Why? Because I understand better than anyone the science of breakthrough. That's what I'm mainly interested in. It's all on a foundation of data, facts, studies. It all sits on that foundation. But me just translating that to you like I'll be honest with you, the majority of the minds that you potentially have heard from, you know, the therapists, the counsellors, the doctors, the Google forums, all these things, they're just relaying information that you could have gone to the source to understand. That's not the issue here. We need to understand how to implement it. That's what we're about to do today. Because in the science of the breakthrough of this, I'm going to relay this in a way to you that makes it very easy to understand and very easy for you to apply in your life. Because panic, when you understand what I'm about to show you, becomes a choice. Not an uncontrollable reaction that just swarms you, not an uncontrollable feeling that just comes over you and there's nothing you can do about, but a choice. Sound good? Would that be okay with you if you took power and took control here? Good, I thought so. So let's crack on then. Because you see, and if you're with me on YouTube now, please like and subscribe, because I'm going to be using my hands and this wall in the office of where I am behind me as a demonstration. For those of you on Spotify and who may be listening to this on audio, do not fear, because you're going to also get as much benefit from this, because I'm going to explain it very, very clearly. Because you see, we all have something that I call, the emotional threshold of control. The emotional threshold of control. And if you can visualize like a measuring jug, for example, and let's say that measuring jug, for hypothetically speaking, can take 1,000 milliliters, 1 litre. Let's say that at 0.6 of that litre, that is your emotional threshold of control. Okay, and so up to 0.6 of that measuring jug, you deal with day-to-day life stresses. You deal with, you know, kids needing to be somewhere, your partner saying something to you that you need to deal with, work stresses, moments, situations, circumstances, and all of that adds up to 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and it adds up to a point where sometimes it might be at 0.65. And when it gets to 0.65, you feel a little bit really angsty. And why? Because it's starting to go past your level of threshold of control in this measuring jug analogy. And so when it starts to break that threshold of control, all of a sudden then, what you can emotionally deal with is 0.6 of a litre, if you can visualise that. 0.6 of a litre is the threshold of emotional control that you have. And the day-to-day life situations we learn to deal with. But then what happens? Then you get faced with a situation. You might have had a really uncertain moment when you was driving, or a really horrific moment when you was on a plane, or you might have had an argument with your partner and it caused a huge row and certain situations, or you might have had a health scare. And in that moment, stay with me here, in that moment, that emotional threshold of control that you can currently absorb up to 0.6 gets blown out the water. Why? Because in your measuring jug comes 0.85 worth of stress, overwhelm, worry, panic, doubt. And all of a sudden now, there's a gap. There's a very evident gap between the level of threshold of control which you have got and the impact of the external circumstances coming in. Remember, you can only deal with 0.6, hypothetically speaking. You're having to deal with a 0.85. It overwhelms, it floods what you can emotionally deal with. It goes way beyond the level of threshold of control that you've got. So the key problem here is then, you're then faced with 0.25 of a difference. The difference between 0.6, which you can deal with, and 0.85, which is the panic and the worry that you're having to deal with in that moment from the external circumstance, and that creates that void of 0.25. And in that moment, that is where panic sets in. Because if you think of every time you feel most panicky, this is the reason why it exists in your life. If you think of the moments when you are most panicky, it is always because it goes past that metaphorical 0.6. It is always when you face that super uncertain situation, when you're dealt with that really uncomfortable moment, when you feel way out of your comfort zone that you feel really panicky, right? Exactly. Why? Because the external demand that is coming into your metaphorical measuring jug is way beyond the limits that you can deal with. So panic sets in. And that panic, that emotional automatic response that then, oh God, I just need to get out of here, is to try and get you out of this situation so you can go back to getting things back within your control. That's why you stay at home and don't drive the car. That's why you cancel the holiday. That's why you get out of that meeting at work. That's why you stop talking to that person. That's why you end the relationship, or whatever it may be. Is because you'll do anything you can to try and get a grasp of bringing that 0.85 back down below that 0.6 level of control. And you see, when this happens, we find ourselves in a situation where we end up tiptoeing through life after this. Why? Because for so many years, my 0.6 has been completely fine. I've dealt with the kid situation, or the little mini argument, or the new job, or the new situation I've had to face, and they've acquainted to about 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, but it's all been within my level of control. It's all been below the line in the measuring jug. But then when that situation happens, or when there's a lot of different things that happen at one time, you know, I'm having that relationship issue, that work issue, that finance issue, that health issue, all at one time, it can go way beyond my 0.6 level. This is where panic sets in. This is the only time panic will ever set in. This is why it exists in your life. Panic, and hear me on this, panic is a beautiful emotion that people use at the most convenient times. Have you never realised that? Panic always shows up for you at the perfect time, doesn't it? When you feel completely overwhelmed or overstressed or overly anxious, panic will set in and get you out of that place quicker than your Amazon parcel arrives. And that can be quick. Don't you find that amazing how that happens? Why? Because you've teetered over the edge of the 0.6. And so what happens is then we go through life, and as I was saying to you before, we deal with the day-to-day stressors, but now we live in a constant state of panic. Why? Why are we now in a constant state of panic? Well, because we've now been privy to a situation, we've now been privy to a time in our lives where we know it's out there where 0.85 could flood me again. 0.85 is out there. I've experienced it. It was horrible. And guess what? Because you're still at 0.6 and you haven't done anything to raise the emotional threshold of control that you have got, you constantly live in fear, in panic, in worry, in angst, that you want to hope that the 0.85 doesn't come flooding you again. Can you see how this works? Because like I say, I take all the science of this, all of the data, all of the studies, all of the understandings from the science, and apply it and show you it in a way that is really, really simple. Why? Because simplicity enables us to execute things. People have this whole fixation on, or if I make it sound mega complex, that means I'm more smart. Rubbish. Rubbish. I like simplicity. Simplicity makes it easy for me to be able to operate. You know, get a new phone and they get all these different buttons and this and that, and or whatever it may be. You're like, I just want something where I can go on my social media, send some messages, phone that person, I've got the odd app. I don't need all this complexity. Complexity stops you from implementing. Simplicity allows breakthroughs. That's why I make everything. I get all the complex, you know what, I nearly used the swear word, I wouldn't do that on my podcast, but I get all the complex, you know what, I probably would at some point, and I make it simple for us to understand. And so if I go back to the measuring jug analogy, most people are operating around that 0.6 level of threshold of control, but now they know what lives out there is a 0.85 because I've experienced it. It's like being in a situation, and I've worked with a lady in a very similar situation to what I'm about to explain here. It's like living in a home. Your home is your threshold of control. You feel safe, you feel secure. You deal with the day-to-day ups and downs and bills and things that come in, but then one day you get burgled. You get burgled in that home. And guess what? When you get burgled in that home, then you're in a situation where I can never feel as safe, or maybe I can, but if I leave this the same way, if I leave my home in the exact same state, there's that area of panic a little bit that this could happen again to me. This could happen again. So what do? You end up taking extra steps to raise your level of safety. If I bring this back to your measuring jug, you should raise your level of emotional control. But this is the thing, most people don't. Most people do not upgrade, enhance, or bring new software to their emotional being. Like you would if you're with your home, you would upgrade security, you would upgrade the cameras that you have, you would upgrade so many different things to ensure that you're in a safer place. People don't do this emotionally. They're then paralyzed in a place of panic because they don't change their level of threshold of control. That 0.6 they keep there, but they live in this state because they know that 0.85, I beg your pardon, is out there. And so when it comes to this is everything that I do. This is everything that I show people. Let me be clear, I say this most of the time. You are not broken. You don't need fixing. You don't need healing. You haven't got anything wrong with you. You're simply stuck. You're stuck, respectfully. You're stuck at 0.6. But guess what? How about in that 1,000 metre, 1.0 litre measuring jug, how about if I showed you how you could create 1.0 level threshold of control? How about if I showed you what 1.0 looked like as a threshold of control? Then guess what? It doesn't matter if it's 0.2, 0.6, 0.8, 0.999 that come flooding in. I know that I can deal with it. So therefore, panic doesn't need to exist. Panic does not need to exist. Panic will only ever exist, write this down, panic will only ever exist when the external demands, the 0.85, is higher than my internal threshold of control, 0.6. That is the only time panic will exist. No one has ever created or had a panic attack when they're in a situation where they feel completely loved, completely connected, completely safe, completely calm, completely relaxed, completely in control. No one's ever had a panic attack in that case. Panic attacks, the overwhelming dread and feeling of panic, only ever arises when the external level of demands, i.e. the burglary example, or i.e. the relationship, the work, the health, the finance situation all happening at once, is higher than my emotional threshold of control. And the problem that people find themselves in is they'll go to a therapist or a counsellor, and what they will learn is just how to try and manage the 0.85. Try and manage how you can deal with that best. Rubbish! No! Instead, focus on you. Focus on raising that 0.6 to 0.7 to 0.8 to 0.9 to 1.0. Because when you do that, it doesn't matter what happens out there. It doesn't matter what external demands come in. Why? Because you know you're emotionally safe, secure and in control, and your threshold of control says, you know what, no matter what happens to me, it will not define me. It will not shake me. It will not riddle me with panic and fear. This is so possible. I get so passionate about this because so many people come to me with limiting beliefs and traits and emotions. They've been told this, they've been told that. I just need to manage it. We all need anxiety. We all need a little bit. No, rubbish. Simply not the case. You don't need these things. You need an awareness. I need an awareness to make sure my home is secure. I need an awareness to make sure that I'm emotionally updated, enhanced and upgraded to be in a place. I don't then need to use the traits that riddle me with worry and fear and doubt and panic and anxiety. I don't need those. No. The only reason they're showing up is because I'm not in a place where I can deal with these current situations, so this is having to fill the void for me. Because like I said, there's no coincidence that these traits show up at the perfect time. Every time you feel massively unsafe, insecure, out of control, uncertain, it's amazing how this panic shows up at that perfect time, isn't it? This is why panic exists in your life. But most importantly, this is how to eradicate panic quickly. I can't tell you the amount of people who I've worked with, panic attacks. Someone struggled with panic attacks for 45 years before they come to see me. Funnily enough, they worked in the NHS, had tried many of those options. This isn't slating the NHS, by the way. They do a wonderful job in many areas. But for emotions, they can definitely be enhanced. For helping people emotionally, it can definitely be upgraded without question. And so this lady come to see me, 45 years of panic attacks, works with me for 8 weeks. Been free now for the last 12, 15 months. After 45 years, how can that be? Because of exactly what I'm explaining to you here. Increasing that threshold of control. Now some of you are sitting there now going, I get it, Matt. I get it. You're making sense. This isn't just the science of understanding and me learning all these nice things. I can see this is the science of breakthrough. This is how I can do it. Now, Matt, just tell me, how do I enhance my threshold of control? Great question. Great question. Well done. I knew you was asking that one. So you see, here's the thing. Here's how you can upgrade. And I'm going to give you 2 ways. 2 ways that have different subsectors. The first way is what I always talk about. Your emotional state. Surprise, surprise. It's the foundation of everything. Your emotional state. How do you take control of your emotional state, which will therefore increase your threshold of control? Through how you use your body, how you use your focus, and how you use your words. Meaning, if you're in a strong, empowered, you breathe full, chest back, shoulders down, head up, using your body in a really powerful way, you focus then on what you can control in your life, not what you can't control and what's missing and what could go wrong. And then you use words of strength to back that up, you'll put yourself in more of a place of control. If you want to be down and unsure, I'm not sure how that's going to go, and talk like this, and I think that could go wrong, and use physiology in a way. Nope. You're creating a breeding ground for anxiety, panic and fear to thrive, my friends. That is number 1. Absolutely number 1. The second part is this, and I'm going to move on to this second part quite quickly because I always talk about number 1, but the second part is this. You are going to face challenges in your life, whether you like it or not. I'm not here to tell you that life is rosy and every single day you're going to wake up and it's going to be sunny and the birds are tweeting. And no, you're going to face challenges in your life. As am I, as is every single person on this planet. But here's the thing. How well equipped are you to take them on? Most people, and again I'm saying most people, I'm very aware of the language I use, most people wait for the challenge to come and hit them in the face before they have to try and step up and deal with it, and they wonder why they can't. What do you actively do, and here's my question to you, what do you actively do on a day-to-day basis to challenge yourself in a positive, proactive way? What do you do to challenge yourself, whether it will be mentally, emotionally, physically, in your health, in your relationships, in your business, in your finance? What do you do to challenge yourself in a healthy, proactive, positive way? How do you do it? Because for many of you listening to this and listening to my voice or watching this now, respectfully, you won't have an answer for me. You won't have an answer for me. And that's not a problem, but it is an awareness point. Because most people will wait until their car breaks down to have to fix it. Well, how about instead, imagine if you actually put everything in place so you never actually got to that stage. How about before that life gave you that challenge to deal with, you actually took on challenges so that when life just gave you one, you just dealt with it like you do every other challenge in your life. You see, I lived an existence once upon a time where life always challenged me and I cowered away. And what I mean by cowered away is I didn't want to I didn't want to face up to the things that I was having to deal with in my life. In my personal life, in my relationships, finances, my football career at the time. On the surface, I'd project this being that was confident, but underneath, There was no substance. I didn't want to face any of these challenges, and life kept throwing them my way. I didn't have no strength, if I want to call it that. I didn't have no muscle to deal with those challenges. And life kept throwing them at me, throwing them at me, throwing them at me. And I was riddled with all of these limiting emotions that I've spoke many times about. And then see, and like I've said in many times, and like I go into a lot of detail with my clients, I started to change things. This is why I sit in front of you today, because I changed things in my own life. And I transformed my life to a place where I now live a life that I'm incredibly proud of in so many areas. I can still enhance and grow, but I'm so proud of it. But here's one thing that I'm potentially even prouder of. I've never, since my life has turned that corner and I've made those changes, I've never not created challenges in my life. Why? Because I understand the concept of constantly increasing my threshold of control, of constantly enhancing who I am, what I am, so that when life throws me the challenges, I'm not having to use panic or fear or worry or doubt or dread or overwhelm. And there's that part of me that knows and registers, you know what, Matt, you've got this. Why? Because I've got a backlog of evidence. I've got a filing cabinet's worth of evidence that I constantly show myself over and over and over again of me taking on challenges. You know, some of you have heard about certain things where I ran marathons and ran ultra marathons and running for 42 hours non-stop. I'm currently training to swim the English Channel. People listening to this are going, well, that's great, Matt, but how on earth does that apply to my emotions? Why? Because you don't think they're not emotional journeys that I go on? Every single time. But they are challenges that I actively seek. On a day-to-day basis, having an ice bath, taking a risk, doing something in my relationship that I think might enhance it. This isn't about big, granular type, everyone let's go and sign up for a marathon or a 5K tomorrow. No, but it's about what are you doing day to day to challenge yourself. Why? Because the more you challenge yourself, the more you find out about yourself. The more you find out about yourself, the higher that level of threshold of control becomes, because you realize how strong you actually are. Why my programs are so effective for people, you know, like the Life Empowerment program that has been absolutely transformative over this past year, is because I take people on a journey for 12 weeks where we are challenging ourselves in a beautifully healthy, proactive, positive way, challenging ourselves. So when people get to the end, they don't even recognize who begun. Why? Because they started at a 0.6. By the end, they're at a 1.0 and they're like, you know what, there's things that I'm doing now that I never thought I could deal with because I was struggling with too much panic. Well, guess what? Those things still exist, those external demands still exist, but now you've proactively challenged yourself instead of just waiting and seeing what might happen because hopefully I might need to use panic to... No. This isn't me telling you, this is me giving you an option to overcome the debilitating panic in your life. Because this is the reason panic exists. More importantly, this is what you can do to help free yourself from it. Number one is take control of your emotional state. Number two is find proactive, healthy, positive ways to challenge yourself. If you shy away from challenges, life has a beautiful way of presenting them to you. Life intends for you to grow. You either plant your own seeds or life plants the seeds for you. I like to take control of that personally. I like to see the flowers that my garden bed produces. I want, hopefully, the same for you. Hopefully you want that for you. Because I promise you this, panic does not need to exist in your life. Do I face challenges out of the blue? Do I face situations in my life? Do I face things that make me feel a little bit uncertain at times? Of course I do. I'm a human being, I'm not a robot. Do I stay stuck in that debilitating panic and fear and worry and dread? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. Why? Because of the very methods that I'm sharing with you. And I don't care, of course I care, but I don't care about backstories or backgrounds or why you think it may not be possible or why you think it is possible. I know it's possible for you. Not because I'm so smart, not because I have all the answers, because at this stage, having helped thousands of people from around the world from so many different backgrounds, you see these certain patterns that lie underneath that ring true for all human beings. I'm not telling you how to live. I'm not telling you what challenges to take on. I'm not telling you anything like that. Who am I to tell you? I'm just saying that this is the framework, that if you want panic to be a thing of the past in your life, this is how you can take control. Because I think if you're listening to me, you probably want to enhance that 0.6. You probably want to raise your threshold of control. So that 0.85 that comes flooding in, you're not having to use panic because it's all too much for me to deal with and I can't deal. No. My bet is you probably want to enhance that. I think it's about time we did that in a healthy, proactive, positive way. Otherwise, as the old saying goes, you keep doing what you're doing, you get more of what you got. Life doesn't change by chance. A great life doesn't happen by chance. It happens by design. We need to put you, pun unintended, back in the driving seat, back in control. A 1.0 on your measuring jug. And guess what? Every time you look at that measuring jug from this point on, it will be used as an anchor, as a metaphor for you to remember my voice right now. Remember this podcast. When you go to make your dinner or you bake your next cake or whatever it is that you do, and you take that measuring jug out, you can ask yourself, where's my current threshold of control? What am I doing to take control of my emotional state? What am I doing to proactively challenge myself in a way that's actually enhancing that level within me? Food for thought. Measuring jug food, pun unintended. You get the deal. Guys, I hope this has been profound for you. If you want some support, if you want guidance, if you want advice, if you want help in this area, you know where to find me. If you want to be challenged, quote unquote, in a healthy, positive, proactive way to enhance that level, I have some wonderful, wonderful options for you that I'm more than happy to discuss with you further. I look forward to seeing and serving you in whatever capacity that may be very, very soon. It's an absolute pleasure bringing you this platform. It's an absolute pleasure serving you in this way. I look forward to doing it much, much more. Have a wonderful day. It is time to elevate your mind. Take care.